Hello everybody, this is Danny Rabin from the band Marbin. I want to give you a quick jazz lesson on how to have, I would say, useful voicings in every area of the guitar for a major scale. So useful voicing, when you listen to your favorite jazz players, Joe Pass, Wes Montgomery, they seem to always be able to grab something, like if they're just playing even a simple C major melody. They can do things like they always have things to grab. So when you're looking at a lot of YouTube lessons, the problem is you run into a lot of ungrabbable stuff. A lot of the voicings sound great, but they're just not practical. A lot of these like drop twos, you see these voicings like things creeping up that you would really have to, they take you out of the moment, is the point. So what I like to do, and I think it works, is to have something that sounds like the style in every area of the neck. What I mean by that is simple. If I take a C major scale, right? C major just on the top E string, starting from C, your root note, and going down maybe to this G, just to kind of have it all over the neck. I want to have a good thing to grab that sounds sort of like C, with every one of these notes as the melody note, as the top. So let's just map it out one octave from G to G, but it's the C scale, right? C major scale. Now, for each one of these, I want to have something to move. The truth of it is that you can get two distinct colors from the same scale. You can get what I call the tonic side of the scale and the dominant side of the scale. All I mean by that is that the tonic sounds sound like home and the dominant sounds sound like something that wants to go to home. But the note on top could stay the same. I'll be clearer with the examples. So the tonic side is really made up mostly of a C major pentatonic scale. So I'm taking out the 4th and the 7th degree of the scale, the F's and the B's, and I'm making chords that just, it could be a few things, but I just have favorites. It's sort of to me, it's some sort of compromise halfway between Wes Montgomery and Django. But here you go. So this is the 5th of the scale on top, G on top. It's just fourths. It kind of corresponds with this C6-9 shape. So let's call that shape 1 in C. Doesn't necessarily have to be shape 1, but let's just call it that. And that gives me the 5th of the scale, G, on top. The next one will have the 6th of the scale on top. That you can think about that as an A minor 7 inversion, but to me it's still just a C6 sound. The 3rd note on top, the 7th, is just kind of a C major 7. Then I have another one of these 4th voicings, but really it's coming out of this shape. Here's a real Django voicing. So on top, I have this. It's kind of like a C with a 6 and a 9. On the very top here, there are two options. I like this one, which is an A minor 7 inversion. And now the 4th on top is a tricky thing because the 4th in an Ionian mode, it's that sus sound, it's the avoid note. So I can use that 4th voicing, but I know it has to move. This might seem overcomplicated, but all it gives you is the ability to move melodies around, the kind of melodies you'd whistle, boom, ba 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 boom, ba 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 boom, and stay inside that tonic sound, and now have blocks to move. Right? Do 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 be do 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 do. Now, that just gives you, basically you're playing C, 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 C. The dominant side of the scale gives you the ability to kind of go C, G7, C, G7, C, G7. Now, that's the cadence that we're looking for. What I want you to understand is that I'm keeping the same notes on top, but now I'm adding again for the notes in the block, in the chord, that F and the B. I'm now harmonizing from all the really from the notes that exist inside the C major scale, kind of undiscriminately, but really trying to include a lot of B's and F's because they give me that cadence. So the shape to keep that G on top and get the dominant side of the scale, I'm just using that. That's sort of just a G7. I'm really focusing on those top 4 strings, right? So that's F, B, D, G. That would be the shape 1. Now that resolves into that C. Here's shape 2. That's sort of a version of a B half diminished. And that can resolve here, right? Shape 3 would be this next inversion of a B half diminished or a D minor 6. Resolves to our shape that we learned before. This is kind of the sus of that dominant chord. And that resolves here. Another B half diminished goes here. Right? This is that B half diminished with an E on top. What I really get, or maybe the last shape is this. Another B half diminished. What I really get though is the ability to move kind of that dominant side of C major with using G7 or B half diminished chords and connecting a melody on top. And then I can use the same notes on top and play an Ionian sound. So let's say I'm playing the beginning of All of Me. The first chord is C. So inside the framework of that C, I could just move C sounds. Or I can create tiny little cadences like, right? That was like C, G, C, right? Or C, dominant side of the scale, C. Or so that's really how you would use that approach inside a major scale. And you can obviously practice this in every key, and it allows you to play over one chord and pivot to the side, drawing from the mixolydian side or the dominant side of that same scale and then hopping back in. So a good thing to practice would first of all just be walking up the tonic side of the scale. Down, right? Not including any dominance yet. And here's the dominant side of the scale. And really memorize those shapes. Really, all for the tonic side of the scale, it's a combination of A minor 6, like the 6 minor of the key, drop 2 voicings and 4th voicings. I'm choosing these because they're more grabbable than moving your typical these guys. And they kind of have when you're using varied material, it has a more interesting sound rather than just sound like inversions of one thing. So again, tonic side. And here's the dominant side, right? This is kind of a G7, B half diminished, B half diminished or D minor 6. This is a D minor 7 basically. B half diminished or D minor 6. Whatever you want to call that. It's just that with a different melody note. You could call it like a D minor 6 with a 9 or whatever. Another B half diminished. And then we're back on top. And again, moving from one to the other. This is a great thing to practice. So keep the melody note. So that gives you vocabulary. Now you can turn that into lines. A lot of these things are literally so if I'm just playing in C and I want to create the sound of a cadence, that That was just the dominant side, using approach notes. Cool. Hope that helps.